Hi, it's John from Crafts by John UK. Today's card is this Christmas card, which is quite unusual in a modern style. The background I've created using a jelly plate and Brushos, which I've sprinkled on and then spritzed to create an interesting green, mossy, olive, lime splattered effect. On top of that, I've placed a die cut panel of tracing paper, which looks like vellum, works like vellum, but is much cheaper. And then a similar rectangle which I've embossed with a snowy pattern. On top of that, I've sat a die cut Christmas tree which I've done with Distress inks or Distress Oxides, and then a tag with Happy Christmas and a little glittery kind of metallic effect star which I've backed with a matching green. Overall, you can see quite a modern looking Christmas card in a slightly different style, and I've batch made 4 of these. Obviously I've only finished 1, but you will see along the way that I'm batch making and doing 4 of each element. If you're interested in how I've made this card, stay tuned and I'll show you. Okay, I've sped things up a little bit just so that it's not an overly long video, but I do show pretty much the whole process. So the first thing I'm doing is grabbing my jelly mat. Now this was the wrong shaped one, that was my square 6-inch. Because this is a 7x5 card, I need my larger one, and I have got an A4 one, which that one was, but I'm actually going to grab the proper one for a 7x5 card. So that's a 17x12 in centimetres, but in the UK here we affectionately call it a 5x7 in inches. I know if you're in America that works better for people. So anyway, first thing I'm doing is grabbing my glass mat, and you can see here I've got this gel plate. It's not a jelly plate one, it's actually another brand, but it does the same job. And basically I usually stick this down to my glass plate when I'm working with it. Apologies, you can see the light ring there from my camera. Anyway, so the first thing I'm doing is spritzing the plate. Now this I do on the first one I make. I don't do it on the others because I found it actually watered down the colours a little bit too much. So that's a lesson I learned, and I didn't repeat it with the others. So I've got my Brushos. I've got 3 different colours. So I've got a lime green, an olive green and a moss green. And basically you can see what I'm doing. I'm just dropping the powder. It comes out as a very fine powder, very pigment based. I'm dropping that down onto the mat, and I'm then spritzing it again with a little bit more of the water. Now what I did is I blotted this with a piece of kitchen towel, spritzed it again because I just thought it looks a little bit intense, but actually when I did it, it came out quite faint. So that's why I decided on subsequent cards or subsequent backgrounds to actually just go for it and not blot anything. So you can see when I lift this one up, although it's got an interesting background, it's not great. It kind of ended up being a bit sludgy. I think I put too much water on, so it wasn't a great first attempt, but still usable. So anyway, I blotted some of it off, as you can see, with kitchen towel. It's still quite an interesting effect, but obviously not as kind of bold and dominant as I was really looking for. So I cleaned up the jelly plate. And then obviously I'd got others to make because I was making several of them. So I kind of went in again, but this time on dry. So I put the powders down on dry, and with the idea of spritzing that with the water. So this is the fun of card making. You kind of try one thing, it doesn't quite work out. What's the worst thing that happens? You've wasted a few drops of powder and you've wasted a piece of paper. So anyway, so this was very much trial and error, a bit of experimentation. So you can see here I've kind of put the powder down. I have done a little bit of blotting, but I've gone back over in on the one that I wasn't too happy with, just to give it a bit more. You can see now much more messy, much more effect, much more colour. Some areas where the powders haven't actually reactivated or reacted. So you can then choose whether to go in with water and kind of activate them, or just leave them sitting on the paper. So it's completely up to you, and that's the good thing about these powders. You can kind of do as much or as little as you want, and that's one of the things I like about them. The other thing I have done with them as well is I've used some of the powders and put them into little bottles, which I bought from Temu, watered them down and just used them directly as a spray as well. Obviously it goes on much easier, you end up with flatter backgrounds, but it's just another interesting way of using Brushos, to be honest. They are quite a versatile little product, so there's something I quite enjoy. So you can see I'm working my way through. Sometimes it gets a bit dark depending on the kind of mixture you have. I used 3 different greens, obviously a light, a mid and a dark. If it was kind of too dark, I've then taken it off with kitchen towel. You'll see I'm also using the kind of offshoots around the jelly mat that are on the glass plate. That's why it's a good idea to do it on a glass mat, because you can then reuse that ink as well. So if you kind of look at it and think, needs a bit more lime green, go for a blob of lime green on the glass mat. Basically just keep going until you kind of get the colour you're looking for or the effect you're looking for. And I like doing that as well, reusing the ink that's there, because I kind of think, well, I've already committed to it, I might as well use it rather than just spritz it and wipe it away with a piece of kitchen towel. So there you go. So I'm going in again, and as I said, I was batch making this, so I did make 4 of these backgrounds. They're all quite unique, quite different, which is one thing I love about creating your own backgrounds. It's not like taking paper from a book where it's all very same, very uniform. These have all got kind of a bit of individual life about them, which I love. There we go, so you can see I'm kind of layering, going back in and out with different colours. And also, just don't be afraid of using kitchen towel to kind of blob and spread and just work, what you've got. You can see by blobbing with a piece of wet kitchen towel, you actually add ink as well as take it away. So that's quite versatile, it gives you quite a lot of options. You can spray water on it to take some off. You see I just lifted a little bit off there because it was getting a little bit dark. But that's one of the things that's really good. It's versatile. You can kind of play with it and amend it as you go along, which is one of the things I love. There we go, so I'm cleaning my mat, and you can see I'm cleaning my glass mat as well. So basically just getting all the residue ink or pigment off of that. And this is I think this is a cheap one I bought actually, but I do keep it in the plastic just to keep it from getting dinted or anything, because that can affect the way they work. So it's good to keep them in the original packaging, which I do. Actually, I do that with all my stamps. So that's just me, but anyway, you can see. So that's the mat, which is a good one. Anyway, and you can see media plate there. It's called. If you freeze frame the video, you'll be able to see the brand. So I then gave my glass mat a good clean. Now, some of the elements of this card or this design I had already made. So I'd already cut out a couple of the panels. But obviously I've got more to do, so I'm just now having a look. I'm going to dry all these. Now, if you're going to do other stuff, you need to make sure these are fully dry. This was quite a heavy water stock, or water paper, sorry, I'll get my words out. Quite a heavy watercolour cardstock. It was a 250 or 300 GSM, I think. So it's taken a lot of water. If you do this with a thinner paper or cardstock, you'll find it's going to bend and ripple and it'll be a nightmare. You can see these haven't bent that much. I am drying them with my heat tool, front and back, and just giving them a little bit of a bend just to make sure they're kind of flat, because I need them flat for the next stage of the process. So I always work my way across the front, side to side, just make sure you get everything in, and then do the back as well. That also helps with the bending of the paper. If you heat the back, it kind of dries the fibres evenly front and back and kind of go a bit flat. Use also the heat of the palm of your hand. You see I'm putting my hand down there. That also helps, I find, flatten things out. So another useful little tip there. So I'm just kind of working my way through all 4 of these. I need to just get them all flat basically, so that they're all kind of ready to do the next stage on. And don't they all look different? It's interesting. Similar colours, but you just get such different effects. Some go right to the edge. Some have got kind of white borders around them. This style of card, it doesn't matter. They don't all have to be exactly the same. And actually, the fact they're slightly unique is what makes them so great. So just drying away. This is much better sped up. Otherwise, this would take forever if you were watching it in real time. But anyway, basically just flattening everything out, giving it a bit of a bend, and basically just making sure that they're ready for the next step. See how that flattens when you heat it? You can see it, really see it when it's sped up. The backs are almost as interesting as the front in some of them. I think I have actually done that before, made a card front and then actually used the back because I preferred the way that looked. But anyway, let's not talk about that. Remember, no mistakes in card making, just discoveries. Right, so I think that's all our 4, all dried, bent, so that they're actually now quite flat. There we go, and I can put them all together so you can see them. Right, this next stage then, we're going to be making another element of the card that we need. So I'm using my WH Smith tracing paper. Now, I swear by this, and I've made other videos showing it. This is very similar to Vellum, but Vellum is really expensive. At WH Smith's, which is a stationers here in the UK, you can go and get a whole pack of tracing paper for under a fiver, whereas Vellum costs you nearly that a sheet some places. But anyway, so what I'm doing, I'm cutting out a layer. So I've got my white panel there, which I've embossed with a snowy background. And apologies, it's a bit glary, but you can kind of see it. But basically, that is on a shaped rectangular panel. I've got the slightly larger, similar rectangular panel from that same die set, which I'm going to cut a piece of tracing paper, or vellum as I could call it. I'm going to cut that out. I want this to sit between the two layers so that you can still see the green and the blots and the splots underneath, but it kind of sits as a panel between the two. So I'm cutting that on my Gemini, and you can see here I've cut that panel out. It's got the same stitching around the edges that will match the white panel, and that's the key thing. So you can see it's just a nice layer and a nice border. If I did the white directly on the green, I feel it would just be a bit too much of a contrast, be a little bit stark. This kind of lessens the effect. So you're going to have the white panel, you're then going to have the tracing paper panel around it that then goes onto the green. But of course, because the tracing paper is opaque, you'll be able to see it through a little bit. So I'm just going to cut 4 of those. Apologies, I'm obviously batch making as I said, so you will see me cut 4. But basically I'm just repeating the same process every time with my Gemini, obviously trying to maximise how many I can get out of a piece of tracing paper. Sadly, I think it did only end up 2 because it was an awkward shape and I couldn't kind of fit them sideways to get 2 out of the other end. But anyway, I'm just working my way through, so I'm just cutting 4. Batch making is something I tend to do with Christmas cards. I make about 100 for my own use. When I used to sell them, I used to make about 400, but when I stopped selling them so much and just use them for myself now, I have to make about 100. To make 100 individual design cards is quite hard, so I do batch making little batches of 3 or 4 at a time, basically. So I come up with an idea, I come up with a design, then batch make a few of those, and then like a little production line, I just assemble them together. There we go, and you can see what that's going to look like. Now at this point I'm trying to decide top or bottom. So I think I started at the top thinking I'd put the sentiment at the bottom, but then ultimately decided no, I'm going to put the sentiment on the little white tag with the star cut out. These are dies, the tree is a die and the little tag is a die. So at this point I'm looking for a sentiment. I need to find a sentiment that will go onto that tiny little die. That's a die cut little label. It's got a hole at the top and a little star inside it, which I'm going to back. But what I had to do is butcher a little sentiment there and cut it into 2 layers, which won't affect it in the future. I can still put it on a single layer, but it just gives me the freedom to put one above the other. So you can see I'm popping my little tag, and apologies, this was slightly off screen so you couldn't see it, but I'm putting my little tag bottom left so that I can just kind of see what the hell I'm doing with it, basically. So I've got to put these 2 layers on there and get them into a place that I'm kind of happy with the positioning. I'm using my tweezers to do that because obviously the stamps stick to your hand. So I'm just taking my plate off my stamping platform there just to check, and the lines on that clear plate are helpful because it does help you check if you've got them level. So I'm actually going to ink that up in green. And this is my first attempt, basically, just to see what it looks like. It actually came out okay. I did forget to use my magnets, so I was a bit worried. Oh no, when I take this off, is it going to be a mess? But actually it ended up alright. So straight into the clear, ultra fine emboss, and then I heated it with my heat tool. And this was in a kind of like a holly green, which went with the background. So you can see there, I'm just heat embossing it, basically front and back. And then we end up with a nice tag, which has got our Happy Christmas message on. And I decided I was going to back the star with a little metallic piece of card. I'd got an offcut from a set with basically a kind of a metallic-y, pearlescent almost, sort of sage green. And I decided that would match something in the background of the card, so I used that. So basically I'm just batch again making 4 of those. And just heating them individually, burning my fingers as I go, basically just so I've got my 4 tags. So that became our sentiment, which is great because it saved me having to do something somewhere else. There was just that area on that tag crying out for something, and by cutting that that stamp down, I managed to kind of make that fit, which was good. And that's flexible for the future. I can still put it on a line. I just need to obviously make sure it's lined up correctly. So there we go. So there's our little tags. We've got our 4 little tags. Oh, in fact, no, one more. So then basically the only thing left to do then really is assemble it, because we've got all the different elements. We've got the white panel which has been embossed, we've got the Christmas trees cut out that have already been coloured in Distress inks or Distress Oxides in green. We've then got our little tags, just need to back that with the Pearlescent green and then just pull the whole thing together basically, which is the fun part. So there we go. I did notice there was a little mark on the corner of that one, and I just used an ink eraser there to just rub that out. I don't know quite what it was. It was just a dirty mark, I think, from my desk, but it kind of disappeared, which was good. Cleaning up my stamp as I go, which I tend to do. There we go, and then I'll put them away. And that came from a woodware set. It was just a little basic message at the top, which I just obviously cut down, but that's fine. So that worked perfectly. Right, into assembly mode then, and we're nearly done. So we've got all our different elements. So we've got obviously the tracing paper layer, the white layer, the tree, the tag. So how I do this, rather than messing around, I stick the white to the tracing paper and then back the tracing paper underneath the white, so that I know exactly which area is going to be covered up by the white. You can see tape underneath tracing paper or vellum. I know there are special vellum glues you can get, but typically there's somewhere always on a layer that you can put some tape underneath without people seeing it. So I decided to do it the other way around. So I stick my white down, and then you'll see I stick the tape underneath the white on the vellum layer. That covers that whole problem up, and I have no issues with visibility of tape or glue. The little edge piece that's not stuck, that's absolutely fine. It will hold itself down on the card, so that's absolutely fine. There we go. So I'm pulling those tapes off. I'm using double-sided rather than glue. And then I've just got to decide on the positioning and also which way up, because these can be either way. So again, I'm still playing top to bottom. I decided ultimately to go kind of absolutely in the centre and just have the tag off centre. So I did use glue on this die cut, because this was on watercolour paper. It was quite heavy. It could take the glue no problem without warping or anything. So I just used my little pinhead glue bottle, and I just put glue along all the fronds down the middle. And I decided to put this slightly offset on the left hand side, so that gives me position on the right to put the tag. So I just put my hands on that with a piece of scrap paper just to dry it. I don't want to put my hand directly on it really, because in case there's any grease or anything. It's Distress Oxides, so they're kind of greyish. They sometimes show marks. But here, this is where I'm deciding I need my little pearlescent green underneath the tag star just to fill that hole. There is a hole at the top. I could have put ribbon in there if I wanted to. Decided not to, because I decided the positioning I was going to put it, that would be on the green background anyway, so that's fine. So I'm just cutting a piece of that, and that will absolutely cover that star up at the back. And I'm just going to again use my glue just to ground that basically. So a little bit of glue around the star, stick that on, stick it down with your hand. The heat from your hand will help it set. And then I decided to do the tag slightly lifted from the card base. So that's the position I'm going to put it, and then I got some little foam pads basically, and just put a few of those on the back there just to lift it up for a little bit of interest. It's always interesting if you lift something on a card, just adds that extra layer of interest, because you get a shadow and it just doesn't look like a flat card. It kind of gives it a bit of a 3D element. There we go. So I decided on that positioning, and then the fun job of peeling off all the little backs of the foam pads. I always use my tweezers for that, because I make such a pig's ear of it if I try and use my fingers. There we go, that's done. Get rid of my little bits into my paper box, which is next to me for recycling. And then it's a case then of just finding the position for that. So we're doing jaunty angle, and we want the top hole to be on the kind of vellum effect, so that you see a slightly different colour of the background. And then the only thing left to do really is to mount this. Now I typically mount on black just for neutrality. We haven't really got any black ink on here because it's stamped in green, but I decided black would still be good anyway. So again, double-sided, put my glue away there. So double-sided tape. You get through quite a lot of double-sided tape if you work the way I do, but it's super cheap. This is just your basic stuff. I think I get 3 rolls for a £5 off Amazon. So I tend to like my double-sided. I put quite a lot down on this bottom layer because that's the layer with the that's had all the water. By putting the bit across the middle and the two supporting bits, that just makes sure that that stays completely flat. I do not want this to lift up. That looks really unpleasant when the person receives it if it's warped. So then it's a case of just laying this down, eyeballing to get a basic balance around the card. Two sides obviously stuck down with the right border, and then I just need to use my scalpel and my metal ruler to just ruler out those other two sides and cut all the excess off. I find it easier to do it this way than cutting a panel and then trying to get it in the middle. Once it's down, it's anchored, it's easier for me to cut two bits than jimmy around and try and make it work, and often screw it up. There we go. So there's our card back now in black, and then the only thing left to do is double-sided now and stick it onto a 7x5 inch card blank. This ended up being quite a nice design. I'm quite glad I made 4 of these. They will certainly be well received at Christmas, I think, and I'm getting on with my Christmas cards. I think I've made about 70 now, so I don't actually need to make loads more, which is great, and I've got several months to kind of finish that off. I don't like leaving it all to the last minute because you end up making them in a hurry and you don't spend as much time and attention on them as you should really. So there we go. So I've just got myself a 7x5 card blank. I'm just going to score that and obviously make sure it's folded in the right place. Check the card over just to see if there's any dirty marks. Do I need to cover them up? Which is the front, which is the back, usual stuff. And then it's a case of sticking it down. So I just peel the tapes off, this time bunny ears, just so it helps me reposition. And then we're good to go. If only card making was actually at this speed, it would be great. There we go, so I'm checking it out. This one I'd made quite big actually, so I didn't have loads of space around it, and on the others they ended up being a little bit smaller, so that was quite good. There we go, and once I'm in the position, I then just pull those tapes, stick it down, and then you can see we've got our white edge and our black border. I always use my bone folder to just press down those edges where they're cut. And there we go, there's our card for today. Hope you've enjoyed that. I will show you the 4. But if you've enjoyed the video, please give me a like and a thumbs up, and consider maybe subscribing to my channel. Just checking everything over there. You can see it's all down, it's all looking good. The tree looks nice against the white, the background matches, the colour behind the tag matches. Ended up being quite a nice card. So like and subscribe please, and then you'll hear about other videos. And there's my batch of 4 as you can see. Thanks for watching today, and I'll catch you on a future video.